So today we're going to tackle a quick activity, and I want to invite you as we go through this to, if you're using, especially if you're using the replay of this video, pause the video and take as much time as you need for this, because it's really important to get the steps through and be able to really sort of clear your mind. Because here's what we've discovered through lots of neuroscience, and there's lots of research out there. And many of you may have already heard me talking about this, but it's this concept of the fact that whenever we start to think about something or perhaps progress down a pathway, we open a loop in our brain. And this loop, unless it's closed, keeps going round and round and round. And what happens to us is many of us, even in perhaps the first hour of our day, have opened so many loops that we've already set up our brain into a space where actually it's quite overwhelmed. It can't manage that much. Then, of course, instead of us going, well, that's all right, I'll close some of the loops and I'll get rid of them, what we do is we decide now is the moment that I will do my greatest thinking work. And then we sit there and we wonder why it doesn't come to us. And it's because our brain is already so taxed just on the open loops that we have that actually we don't have the capacity to be able to do that deep thinking work or create the latest innovation or think about how we're going to respond to COVID-19, you know, all of those sorts of things. So if you are one of the people that, and this is often what people do, is they start their day by sitting in front of their computer and opening up their emails and going through and sifting through their emails, which is actually a really taxing activity for the brain because it's an energy depleting activity because it's making decisions. And that's a really high energy function of the brain, making decisions and prioritizing. So if you're one of those people that does that and you've got all these open loops in that I'll deal with that email later, I'll respond to that person later, or I must remember to do that. If you're one of those people, then today's session might be really helpful to you. So here's what I'm going to ask everyone to do. Please grab just a blank piece of paper. I don't care really how big it is, the bigger the better, but you just need a blank piece of paper. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I am going to ask you to do a brain dump. So here's a way of us clearing those or closing some of those loops and getting it out of our brain and giving our brain some capacity. So I'm going to give you about, let's say, we're going to have 3 minutes. And you are just going to write everything that comes into your brain, everything that you're thinking about, just write. There is no right or wrong answers here. Everything that you're thinking about, the person you need to ring, the email you need to respond to, all of those things, go ahead and write all of them down. Okay. Now, if you need more time, then go ahead, pause the video and grab yourself more time if you need more time. Of course, the panel, you can always go back to this later on if you need to. But what I want you to do now is I want you to look down that list and I want you to, actually, I might just try bringing up my screen for this. I want you to go down and give it each of those items a rating. So you're going to give it an A if you've got total control over that particular item. You're going to give it a B if you have a level of influence over it. You may not necessarily have total control, but you've got a level of influence. And you're going to give it a C if you've got no influence and no control. So go ahead and go down your list. Give each item an A, a B, or a C. Okay, are we good? Yep. How are we going?
Hurrah.
All right, so next. I need you to grab your second sheet of paper or actually you will need a second sheet of paper. It's easier than using the other side, otherwise you'll be flipping backwards and forwards. And I want you to roll up the quadrant, which most of us are now pretty familiar with, which is Stephen Covey's urgent versus important matrix. And so you're going to roll it up, so then you've got your 4 quadrants, or just draw your grid, so then you've got your 4 quadrants. So you'll have important on the vertical axis, urgent on the horizontal axis, or other way around. Easier if you follow this though. And then not important down the bottom, important at the top, urgent and non-urgent across the top. And then you're going to take all of your A's The ones that you have total control, you're going to work on them first, and you're going to plot them into the grid. So is it, first of all, you're going to ask yourself, is it important? And then you're going to ask yourself whether or not it is urgent. And you're going to pop that particular item in whichever quadrant it fits into. Once you've done your A's, you're going to do exactly the same with your B's as well. You might want to use a different color for your B's, or just note that it's a B on your matrix. And your C's you are not going to touch, okay? Do not transfer your C's onto the matrix. How are we going? Okay, so what have we just created? First of all, so where do we focus our attention now? First of all, what have we actually done? So here's the trick, right? Many people, once they do this activity, for a start, they realize that sometimes they've actually been focusing their attention on the wrong things. So the first ones that you want to do is obviously your urgent and important ones. You want to get them done. And the only way that you can do that is make sure that there is time allocated for that, right? So sometimes people end up in overwhelm because they have a whole lot of things on their to-do list, but it's never actually translated into how they spend their day. So you need to come up with a way of making sure that the things that are in that quadrant one, the do part, actually end up in your day. The second one is that we want to focus our attention in is, as Nikki says, quadrant 2, which is the plan stuff. And this is often the one that people jump into focusing their attention on. And the reason they do that is because it's the stuff they really want to do, but they haven't been able to get to, right? So it's really important to them, but because it's not urgent, they've ended up doing the other stuff. They've ended up doing the quadrant 1 stuff. So if you take a look at that and you say, okay, this is really important to me. How do I make sure I make room in my schedule to make sure I have that? So even if that's, I'm going to carve out an hour of my time to do quadrant 2 stuff every single day, then you'd make a lot of traction over the course of a week if you did that, right? So then, of course, if we look at quadrant 3, it's urgent, but it's not important. Is there a way that perhaps we can delegate that to somebody else? Maybe there is. Maybe there's somebody else that could do that for us within our team. And then the ones that are in quadrant 4, not urgent, not important, absolutely eliminate them. Like, do we need to do them? Now, I'm going to make a little disclaimer here. I will let you keep on with your quadrant 4 stuff if it is something that's like super fun to do, or, you know, like something that's on your wish list or something like that. It's a growth opportunity for you. Then again, you can totally keep it, but just keep it in the right priority order. So if it is, then maybe you're not actually looking at how important it is to you. For example, I put fun stuff in my important section because that's important to me. It's part of my values. So,
I'll just change my golf category, Sarah, right now.
Yeah, you can put that up to important, right? Yeah. But that's it, you know, like even if we look at all the things that we do in our life, just on using this matrix, I think it highlights a lot of stuff for us. I think it can really show up for us what is important to us, because sometimes you find something that you've stuck in quadrant 4 and you're like, well, actually, no, that's really important to me. You know, like maybe I put a phone call with my mother in quadrant 4. Sorry, Mum, if you're listening, sorry about that. But then I realized, actually, no, talking to my mum is hugely important. And if I went a week without doing that, then, you know, I would feel really awful. So that is our little activity. I'd love to hear from the panel, what were your insights from doing that little activity? And I realize many of you have done this many times before, but what were your insights in doing that? And we did do a quick version. Yeah, very true. All right, so.
Sorry, Sarah, just one last comment on that. I think one of the really useful parts of that exercise too is actually the allocation of what you can control, and you know, thinking actually what can you control versus what you can influence versus what's completely outside your control. You know?
Yeah.
Because there's
you'll
normally
notice,
a whole lot less than you can control than you think.
yeah. Yeah, and often we focus on the stuff that we've got no control over, and we're just wasting our brain power doing that, right?
Yeah, wasted energy.
Yeah, exactly. You'll notice that I said do not touch the C's. And I can't tell you how many times that I run this activity and people argue with me over they want to touch the C's. No, but it's important. Well, then why is it a C? If you've got absolutely no influence and no control, there's nothing you can do about it by definition, right? Don't focus your attention and your energy on it. There's no point. That is like a nil return. So
unless there is something you can do to bring it into your zone of influence.
yes.
So, environmental issues. Well, I can't change the planet, but I can do things in a micro level, which brings it back to my control, which is sense of control, which is empowering.
Yeah, certainly. If that is an important issue to you, it's a C, then your question needs to be, how do I make it an A? What can I do that's within my control about that?
Yeah.
But, spinning your wheels and worrying about something that you have determined is outside of your control is not going to be a good use of your time or your energy.
Mm.
All right. Well, that's a fast and furious little trick for today on overcoming overwhelm. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.